Now we're going to bring in Jessica Simons. So let me pull up the correct title. Um,
This is a
and
little bit of a departure for us. This is the first time we've talked about an issue like this, so I'm really interested in it.
yeah, well, it's technology and that fair game for everything. But Jessica is Vice President for Conservation Stewardship at Kalamazoo Nature Center. And a couple of weeks ago, I got a press release that caught my eye that a golf course here in Ann Arbor, go ahead and unmute there, Jessica. Golf course here in Ann Arbor is using some technology to track migratory birds. Did I get that right?
You sure did. And I have to say, it's kind of a treat. Working for a nature center, I don't get invited to go on tech shows very often. So, this is a fun thing.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about that. Now, I have your talking points here, so we can talk about it. So it's called the KVBO Observatory, but what's that all about?
The Kalamazoo Valley Bird Observatory. And really, all that means is that for about the last 50 years, a team of researchers from the Kalamazoo Nature Center have been tracking bird migrations. And so we used to only do that the old-fashioned way, catching birds, putting tiny bands on their legs, letting them go, and then hoping that we catch them again to be able to track, the little numbers on their bands, and sending that data to the U.S. Geological Survey as part of their longstanding bird banding operations. We still do that. And so that's been going strong. Our researchers are actually out there today, which is why you got me instead of the actual, our actual bird research team. But we just started a new project in the last 5 years called Motus. And Motus is the Latin word for movement. And basically all it is a very high-tech way to track migratory animals.
So what is the way that they're tracked? Is it a radio beacon in that tiny little band or something like that? Or
it's essentially, tiny little backpacks with a radio transmitter that you put on individual birds. They do it with bats as well, and a few other migratory animals. But the real star of the Motus work is birds. And it's really given us unprecedented ability to be able to understand what migratory patterns look like for different species, where they're moving, where they're stopping and resting, how their populations are changing over time. And so researchers all around the world are using this technology, and there are kind of two parts to it. You have people who are putting up these radio antennas all around the world, and then you have other researchers who are the avian biologists, who are the ones tagging individual birds, hoping that they will get picked up by the radio towers.
Gosh, I wish we had a picture of those little birds with the backpacks. I should have looked for that, right?
All right. And so you've got a whole network of these receiving sites around the state, right? I think it says 19 here.
Yes, there are more than that in the state of Michigan, but just the team from the Kalamazoo Nature Center has been responsible for putting up 19 of these statewide. And we're really excited about the new one that just went up in Ann Arbor at the Huron Hills Golf Course. And what makes that one pretty exciting is that it completes a line from east to west across the southern part of the state. And what that means is pretty much any tagged bird that flies north or south through Michigan is going to get picked up by one of these towers. Each one of the towers has a 15-kilometer radius that it can track. And so if you have the towers close enough, you can really have a really good chance of picking up any bird that flies through Michigan.
That would have been one of my questions is, limited range, 15 miles. I mean, you got to have a lot of these then. Obviously, we have 19. So is there any gaps in the coverage now, or you pretty much got that filled?
There are some minor gaps, but for the most part, we have the line pretty well completed at this point. And so if you go to motus.org, motus.org, you can actually play around with their dashboard, which is pretty fascinating. You can see where the tower locations are, and you can click on any tower on there and see what individual birds it has picked up.
How big are the towers?
The towers, they just look like a large radio antenna. So, they're not very flashy. If you run across one, it just looks like a big tower.
Okay,
go ahead.
Do you know what the height of them is, or?
Oh, off the top of my head, nope. See, this is why it's a shame that the actual bird researchers are the ones out in the field right now. I don't actually put them up.
Okay, that's fine.
Sorry.
Not a problem. Yeah, because I had technical questions like, what's the frequency and where does it fit in the electromagnetic spectrum and that kind of thing. Because I'm an old radio nerd. I worked in radio for a while. So
I'm so sorry that you have someone trained as a forester on this call.
Ah,
that's quite
indeed.
all right. Not a problem. It's the kind of thing that if people are really interested in it, and me being a radio nerd, I am, I will go look that out. I will seek that information out on my own. So I mean,
Well,
it's to me, it's fascinating that you can, track wild animals in this way.
yeah, and
And
one thing that's really neat about it is that this is really open source science at its best. So it is an incredibly cooperative effort, and it's relying on partners who are not only setting up these antennas and researchers who are tagging birds, but everyone freely sharing the information. So if you go to motus.org, you can not only find plans for how to set up those antennas, all the details about the frequencies that I don't know off the top of my head, but you can also find all of that data that's available. And so what's fascinating about that, it's creating opportunities for researchers to connect as well. So one researcher may see somebody else's results for what they're seeing for their tagged birds, which might spur new research questions.
hmm. Yeah,
Also,
you
oh, go ahead,
mentioned
Matt.
here yeah, you mentioned here that since 2018, the arrays provided over 170 confirmed bird observations and contributed to at least 25 different research projects, right? So this is basic science at its most basic, right? We're studying animal habitat and habitat management issues. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. And so as the numbers that you shared just now, that's just what we're seeing off of the arrays that the Kalamazoo Valley Bird Observatory team have put up.
Wow.
And so that's nowhere near the worldwide impact of this kind of project. But what's fascinating about it is it really does give us good information about what birds are moving through different areas. There are many different parks, many different natural areas, management teams that have an interest in putting these receivers up on their property because it helps them understand which birds are using their habitats. And then that gives them some cues for what they can do to further improve those habitats down the line. So we've had a tower up at the Kalamazoo Nature Center since 2018. And what was really exciting about that, once the tower went in on two of the properties that we manage, we were able to see Kirtland's warblers flying over Kalamazoo County for the very first time. And if you're a conservation geek like I am, that's a pretty exciting bird to find. It was a
Yeah.
critically endangered species in Michigan. They've done a lot of work on conservation action on the ground to help them survive. And to know that they are flying over Kalamazoo County was exciting because we've never actually seen them in our county before.
Yeah, the Kirtland warbler, if I remember right, that's the bird that needs a forest fire for its habitat. They
Yep.
live essentially, or they reproduce anyway, in charred areas mostly, right?
That's exactly it. They depend on really young jack pine trees, and you don't get young jack pine trees without fire. And so, with fire suppression, Kirtland warblers really died down as well. And so, that's a great example of how we can see how on the ground changes in management can have an effect on where birds are moving to.
Yeah, I was always hoping that they'd change the state bird to that, or maybe the piping plover or something. I mean, I got nothing against robins, but robins are a dime a dozen and they're everywhere. And Kirtland warblers are really, they're a sort of a uniquely Michigan or at least Great Lakes bird, right?
Yeah, although, not to knock robins, there also is an interesting study that's going on that we learned about through Motus. There is a group out of Flint that was looking at juvenile robins and trying to see how if their migratory success has changed, because the theory was that lead in the water systems there may have actually affected the migratory behavior of even
Ooh,
common birds. And so
okay.
Motus is being used for a lot of different things.